Donald Trump just told us that he's going to destroy Social Security in order to privatize it. It's like the old, the old Vietnamese, we had to destroy that village to save it. Well, we've got to destroy Social Security to save it. Because during the State of the Union address, he talked about, how many people are over 100 years old getting benefits? How many people over 200 years old are getting benefits? How many people over 300 years old are getting? These are all lies or wild exaggerations. But the point was to say, just like they do with voting, by the way. Oh, there's voter fraud out there, so let's make it harder to vote. Oh, there's Social Security fraud out there, so let's make it harder for people to get on Social Security. It's really, this is an old strategy that Republicans have used forever. This is just the first time they've had the guts to actually do it right out in front of the public. We've seen these, death by 1,000 paper cuts sort of thing, ever since the Reagan administration. The staffing at the Social Security Administration on a staff per payee basis or staff per budget basis, or even in absolute numbers, is lower now than it has been in 50 years. Because, every time there's a Republican in the White House and they submit a budget and it gets passed, it's got cuts to the Social Security Administration staffing in it. And so far, Social Security's been able to sort of keep up, although it does take I think it's 183 days on average to process a Social Security disability claim. And they're saying now that's going to be between 2 and 4 years. But here's how bad it, and keep in mind, Leland Dudek, the guy who is in charge of Social Security, was like this low-level dweeb in the Social Security Administration who stovepiped some information up to Elon Musk and his people about where in the Social Security Administration he thought that you could find some fraud or some waste. And it was probably those 200- and 300-year-old people who don't exist, right? These are programming errors. Got nothing to do with fraud or abuse or waste or anything like that. But this guy passed this information along to Elon that he could use to attack Social Security. And so they made him the director of the entire agency. He was just a low-level dweeb. And now he's running the place. And what is he doing? Well, he just laid off a whole bunch of employees. And, he laid off 12% of the 57,000 workers at Social Security. And what is the result? Well, this is from yesterday's Washington Post, or perhaps it's today's. It was published last night. And I quote, "The Social Security Administration website crashed 4 times in 10 days this month, blocking millions of retirees." I would add, by the way, we're only 25 days into the month. Blocking millions of retirees and disabled Americans from logging into their online accounts because the servers were overloaded. In the field, office managers have resorted to answering phones at the front desk as receptionists because so many employees have been pushed out. But the agency no longer has a system to monitor customers' experience with these services because that office was eliminated as part of the cost-cutting efforts led by Elon Musk. The agency is engulfed in crisis, according to internal documents and more than 24 current and former agency employees and officials. They go on to say, for now, the agency is run by a caretaker leader in his 6th week on the job who has raced to push more than 12% of the staff out of the staff of 57,000 people. He has conceded that the agency's phone service, quote, sucks, and acknowledged that Musk's U.S. Doge service is really in charge of the Social Security Administration. Senator Angus King, the independent senator from Maine, said in an interview, quote, "What's going on is the destruction of the agency from the inside out, and it's accelerating." He said, "I have people approaching me all the time in their 70s and 80s, and they're beside themselves. They don't know what's coming." And then it goes on, this is the Washington Post today. Leland Dudek, the accidental leader, elevated to acting commissioner after he fed data to Musk's team behind his boss's backs, has issued rapid-fire policy changes that have created chaos for frontline staff. Dudek has pushed out dozens of officials with years of expertise. Others have left in disgust. The moves have upended an agency that has been underfunded for years. Calls have flooded into congressional offices. The AARP, the American Association of Retired Persons, announced on Monday that more than 2,000 retirees a week have called the organization since early February, double the usual numbers, with concerns about whether the benefits they paid for during their working careers will continue. Social Security, it turns out, is the primary source of income for about 40% of older Americans. And this is the exact same strategy that they've been pursuing over at Medicare. In 2003, George W. Bush pushed through legislation, the Medicare Reform Act, or whatever it was called, that created, the Medicare Part C had been on the books for a while. It was put on the books, I believe, during the Clinton administration as a neoliberal experiment. Let's experiment with a private corporation offering some Medicare benefits. But it was George W. Bush in 2003 who really turned it into what we call Medicare Advantage today, gave it that name, allowed private insurance companies to use the word Medicare. And what did they do? Oh, well, we're not going to expand Medicare to include vision, even though your eyes are part of your body. We're not going to expand Medicare to include your dental, even though your teeth are part of your body and have a huge effect on your overall health. And we're not going to expand Medicare to include hearing, even though hearing is part of your health. But we will allow Medicare Advantage plans to offer those three benefits. In other words, we're going to break Medicare so that the Medicare Advantage private, corporate, for-profit option looks better. Well, that's what they're doing to Social Security right now. They're breaking Social Security. And, first of all, I told you like 3 weeks ago, actually I told you several years ago, but in particular 3 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, that this was coming. They are going to quickly break Social Security. That's stage one. Stage two, that shoe has not dropped yet, but it will, as predictably as the sun coming up tomorrow. And that is that in the House of Representatives, you are going to see introduced as legislation, probably sometime next week, legislation to offer private investment retirement plans to individuals as an alternative to Social Security, where the Republicans are going to say, hey, young people, if you want to opt out of Social Security, you don't have to pay in any longer. You can pay into this program that's run by Citibank or Wells Fargo or whoever gave us the largest campaign contribution this week, or whoever took us on the best junket to Thailand. This is an organized plan. They did it with Medicare. More than half of Medicare recipients are now on these scam programs, the Medicare Advantage scam, that are run by private for-profit insurance companies, where suddenly people who thought they were on Medicare in many cases, the doctor says, oh, you've got to have an MRI, and they discover that no, the insurance company says, nope, we're not going to pay for it. You can't have that MRI. 80% of the time that the for-profit insurance companies turn people down on Medicare Advantage, if they protest, if they appeal, the appeal overturns the original no. In other words, this is just, the Medicare Advantage is just a scam for a bunch of insurance companies to make a huge, we're talking hundreds of billions of dollars a year in profits, which they then share to with their shareholders and their senior executives and the Republican politicians who made them rich. And they desperately want to do the same thing with Social Security. There's a lot more money in Social Security than there is in Medicare. And here it is from Emily Peck over at Axios this morning. The Social Security Administration is rushing cuts to phone services at the White House's request. Some of the most vulnerable Americans, including people who are hospitalized, kids in foster homes, and those living in remote areas, will face more hurdles applying for disability benefits. Acting Commissioner Leland Dudek said the changes will be made in 2 weeks, although he said it would usually take 2 years to implement these kinds of changes. You get what's going on here? I mean, this is the deconstruction of the New Deal and the Great Society. They're going after those programs that Democrats put into place in the 1930s and the 1960s. They've already taken down a bunch of them. They want to take down all of them. They literally want to take us back to the 1920s.